A cane boil essentially is a process where sugarcane stalks are squeezed into juice, and that juice is boiled into cane syrup.
The cane boil is very important for tradition's sake. We do it for a number of reasons. One, to carry on the tradition of cane boiling and cane grinding, and the other is to provide a social activity for family and friends. And we're always conscious of trying to remember the past. These are childhood memories for me, and we just would like for our children and grandchildren and other people their ages to know about it.
For her, it was tradition. For me, it was a challenge to see if we could do this.
I started this around 2001 or 2. We've done it all my life. You know, I've got pictures of me as a baby around the syrup pot. You use syrup for basically everything. You know, you didn't go to town just to buy sugar. That was the only source of sugar that they had. You know, if you lived 20 miles from town, it'd take you all day to get to town to get syrup, because there wasn't refined sugar at that time. So it was an absolute necessity.
This is the cane stripper, and it's a unique thing. I think my dad may have made it, or maybe Dave. I'm not sure. This looks more like Dave with the fancy stuff on the end. So get a good grip on it, because you have to have a good grip. And you come up as high as you can. Let's go a little bit higher than that. Let's go about here. What do you think?
Yeah.
And then you start down and you strip. It really takes a strong person.
And then you want to leave some, right? So
Right.
that it'll come back the next year.
Right. So give it a whack with a machete.
Mm-hmm.
Now these cane leaves are very, very sharp. You have to be very careful with it because they will cut you easily. But when I was a child, I ran through the cane field with my nephew, and we would just cut to pieces.
You cut it right about there.
Right there. All right.
Well, the mule would provide the industrial power, kind of like the classic version of an ox or a horse. They would provide the power needed to propel something. In this case, the grinder that you'd use to squeeze the cane stalks. Otherwise, it's impossible to get. Cane boils were conducted in South Georgia and Georgia at large. But that they never became a large-scale phenomenon. They were never done on an industrial scale. There's no factory that ever did, that ever produced cane syrup. It was always done on farms just like this one. There's a couple different types of grinders, but one that I'm most familiar with is you'd attach your mule or your horse or your ox, but usually a mule in this area, and attach it to the grinder and have it essentially spin around the grinder itself while sugar cane stalks are fed into it by hand.
Basically, these two rollers are held together very tightly by a couple of 1-inch threaded rods that run, well, there are 2 on the bottom and 2 on the top, and you pull them together and you'll see that there's about 1/8 of an inch gap in there is all you need. And when you run a piece of cane through there, it squeezes the juices right out of the cane.
Mules, of course, have been around for millennia, but when tractors became common, especially after World War II, they started being phased out. Well, the mule wasn't essential to the cane bowl itself, but it allowed us to explore an element that hadn't exactly been present for, at that point, 70 years. Because before tractors, mules were the ones who provided that power. And we wanted to bring some of that back for a day. It allowed us to see what our ancestors saw and what they experienced. Mules generally live for about 30 to 35 years. So she's getting up there in age, but she, a fairly large mule, but she seemed eager to work. She did a great job. Couldn't have been happier.
Yeah, I think that's enough to get it started.
Yeah, I think that's it.
What's interesting is I was worried yesterday when I saw the pile of cane that it was going to be enough. It's always hard to know, how much. We've had, one that is very, it's probably twice the amount of cane that we've had in there, and it produces the same amount of juice. So clearly, obviously, we've had a pretty wet year, and so that, has made the cane very juicy, and so actually we've got more juice than what we need for the boil itself. So
you're doing one or two things. You're constantly getting the impurities out of it, making it cleaner and cleaner, and you're thickening it up by boiling it, and the steam rising, and you're making it syrup's getting thicker and thicker. You learn good lessons. You learn hard lessons. You paid to mess up, and you didn't make that same mistake again. You take that ring and put it on here, and then you'll put cheesecloth or rags. Old people would use tobacco sheets, and you'll bring it to a boil and let it boil over that ring. It'll boil over that ring through them rags and run back in the pot. And when it runs back in the pot, you're steady filtering it, getting more and more of them impurities out of it. You can take syrup that's when it makes syrup and hold it up to the light, and if it looks real cloudy and nasty, you see a lot of stuff in the bottom of the bottle other than sugar, you'll know that you didn't do a very good job. In a minute, we'll bring it to a sure enough boil, or a lot of people would call it a head. It'll be bubbles basically all the way across, and it'll go to boiling over this ring. When it boils over the ring, it'll run through these shirts back under that ring into the pot. It's still climbing right now. It's at about 215 right now. That whole thing comes from Bass Pro Shop.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I've got something that mine is actually a crab stick. I've got two of them.
Microphone.
Where you get?
It's been sitting there for a year.
Yeah. Well, it's got all that impurities in it out of cleaning the pot. That's right.
Call the hole and everything,
Favorite part of the process would be the finished product. Mama puts it in baked beans, and that's pretty good. I've put it on pancakes and put a ham in the oven and rub the ham down good when it makes it have a sweet taste. Cat head biscuits are very good. People would take them cat head biscuits and poke a hole in it, pour syrup in it,
One thing that I saw in this cane boil is that members of the community came out and basically spent time together. It became a community-wide family reunion of sorts.
It brings back memories. Hopefully it's good ones. You're cooking a better shirt in my mind.